Hello everyone and welcome back to Painting with Martin. Today we're going to take a look at one of the expansions from Star Wars Imperial Assault, the board game called Jabba's Realm. And why not delve straight into it by actually starting to paint one of the most iconic figures of all time, namely the Stormtrooper, in the form of the variant kind called the Jet Trooper. And the Jet Trooper paints pretty much the same thing as the Stormtrooper, use pretty much only two colors, namely I've chosen to use white grey from Vallejo, as well as for the darker areas I've chosen to use German grey from Vallejo. So before this I've actually had the time to prime the miniature in white, and then just using a spray can primer, and then I've actually put on, this is how it looks like, the figure. That's how it looks like when it's primed, and you can see I put it on a piece of blue tack and a bottle of Vallejo's color so I can actually handle the figure a little bit better, and I strongly recommend you do so. The Jet Trooper is a really nice, cool figure, but it also can be a little bit hard to paint. And you can use this guide that I will teach you today as a general guide to paint your regular Stormtroopers, with a few exceptions, and I'll notify you when the exceptions come up in the video as well. Now, with that said, Star Wars Imperial Assault is one of my favorite board games. It pits one game master, or 1 to 2 game masters playing the Imperial side, to up to between 1 to 4 rebel players undertaking a variety of missions where they try to beat each other and achieve the mission goals. Really cool game. Came out a couple of years ago, so it's fairly old, but it really holds. It's kind of like a dungeon delver with Star Wars theme on it. Highly recommended if you have a chance to take a look at it, maybe even play it. Some of the expansions can be hard to get because it's fairly out of print. Fantasy Flight that made it has decided not to continue the line and therefore continue the game called Star Wars Legion instead, which is, I wouldn't say similar, but it follows along the similar lines. Now, this video will follow 3 basic steps. First, the base paints. Then second, the shades or washes, and then finally some highlights and finishing touches. And I will also try to teach you how to touch up some of the mistakes as you come along. I'm going to leave this card over here as a kind of a reference, but since the card is fairly small, I would highly recommend you to actually go and have a look at some magnified pictures online when you paint this one, because the card art is not, even though it is fantastic, it doesn't offer that much details. So I'm going to put this one down, and I'm going to go straight into German grey and cover the dark areas. In the dark areas, I've put this on my palette over here for you to see here. I put it and use it neat, and I use a size 2 brush for this one. You can use a size 1 if you want to as well, but just to give you a little bit more control. And I'm holding the brush very close to the bristles here to give me more control, and I do so because the figure is very easy it has a lot of details. So the first part I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can focus at the same time. I'm going to paint the armpit of the Stormtrooper, and I go all the way inside, and I'm going to focus up. I'm going to first paint it, and then I'm going to focus it up because I can't do 2 things at the same time. And it has a little crack in here that you want to cover all the way in here, so like this. And you see here I touched the jetpack here by mistake, but I will touch that up as I go. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as well. It can be a little bit hard to reach, but this is a really good way if you want to get in to start painting the Stormtroopers. You can do that with fairies. Now, with one armpit, the other armpit done, I'm going to pay my attention to the shoulder pads, which are these ones, the pauldrons. And the pauldrons can be a little bit tricky. See here if I can show you this angle. And since they're just one like one line here, I try to paint one line in one go. I put quite a bit of paint on my brush and do one single go, and do the same thing on the other line as well, on the other pauldron. I will try to focus the camera just afterwards so you can see. So see if you can see that. That's how it goes. And I will also paint the same thing on along the lines of this part here, where I show my nail, along the wrist. Putting a fair amount of paint on the brush to do so. Then do the same thing on the other side. Now in between the wrists, around almost on the at the arm, at the elbow, there is another line here. Needs to be filled in, and just try to paint it in a single line if you can. And it can be a little bit tricky getting underneath here, so you may have to turn around the figure as you go. And of course on the other side is a little bit easier because it has more leeway. There you go. Now we're going to focus our attention on the gloves. And the gloves has a little bit white bit over here. That one is supposed to be left out. So we can focus, let's see if I can show you on the other side as well. Maybe it's going to be a bit, yeah, there you see it. There, leave that one out. And then paint the whole glove with this one. Paint the other glove, the other side of the glove as well, next to the gun. You know, it's actually a blaster, so you know they're always really good with these blasters. I'm saying that with a fair amount of sarcasm, because that's one thing we know about Stormtroopers. If they can miss, they will. The Stormtroopers in the game, they're fairly okay, but they only have a life of 3, so not that good. Also on the other side here, on the arm here, on the shoulder, there is another line here. Painted, and on the other side too. Don't forget this line. Like this, doesn't have to be perfect, we can touch it up later on as we go. Now, you can paint this glove. This glove here. Now the reason I'm not using black here is that I want to make sure that I can actually highlight some of the darker areas here with later on when we're doing in the highlights and finishing touches. Of course, the entire gun will have to painting in this area as well, so you can do that too. I'm just going to touch it up here for you. There you go, gun painted like that. Now we're going to turn our attention to the face, and for that I'm using a size 1 brush because you need a little bit more control here. The face tends to be the hardest part here, so let me see if I want to guide you here. The first thing we do is we paint the eyes, and we just paint in one kind of small drop of paint there, moving from side to side, starting in the middle or from one end and just putting it in, looking like this. Now, his eyes, of course, it needs to be completed with the rest of his helmet. And I have a neat trick for this, and I want to teach you this one, is that you paint the entire area of the kind of like the gas mask or breathing apparatus here with black. It's not supposed to be like that, but we will touch it over with some white as we come along. And then you can see here that has some kind of like breathing tubes here. They will also be in white. Touch over on the other side as well. And of course you will do the breathing tubes on both inner and outside, as well as the frontal kind of like machine here. There's two buttons, or a square of buttons that will be covered in this color as well, and two on the other side, but only half of it. Okay, now with this said, I'm also going to go over to kind of like the front visor and paint this line here that you see with the same German grey here. And this is one of the trickier parts, and you try to paint it in one single go if you can. See, I'm making already some mistakes here, but I can touch up with that with some white later. Something like this. I may have to angle it here for you. And then the front part here, this is where it's different from other Stormtroopers, I believe. Normally you leave this white, but in this case you leave a small sliver of German dark grey here. You try to follow the lines here on the head, and you can't really see the lines, but on the middle of the figure you can actually see it, and you take it all the way back. Take it all the way back to where there is a line here on the back of the head. If you made it so far, you've actually did the most difficult part of this model in terms of the base colors. Now let's paint the thighs. The thighs do go under here, and now you can even switch back to a size 2 brush if you like, because you don't need that much detail. And under, let's see if I can angle it here for you, goes all the way underneath here. And you see there is a hole here, and that hole is for a kind of plastic pin that you put the figure on, so it kind of like hovers above the ground as the jetpack would. And this is what you don't have in the regular Stormtroopers. You also don't have this jetpack, of course. Going here on the other side, and also up here in this little spot. Now, it is entirely optional to paint the inner thighs here. I'm going to just give it one small line here. That I will touch up a bit later as I go with some white. And now, with that one is done, we're going to turn our attention to the frontal thighs, kneecaps, as well as, or knees, as well as the I think you call them shins in English. This one here on the left leg, left thigh here, is painted entirely in German grey. Top here as well as the side here. Now the other side is going to be painted only the top small sliver here, as well as the things in between these kind of like lines here. And just painting one line here, that's pretty nice. The other side here, we'll touch it up as we go. If you look at the card art, the color is much lighter, more like grey and not dark grey. And the reason I'm painting this one in darker color is that I can easily highlight it up later on. It has this foot here has kind of a line here, as well as this line here on the other side. Make sure you have got quite a bit of paint on your bristles, on your brush, and try to paint it in a straight line. I can't really do that here because I have the camera on top. You can do the same thing on the other side here, as well as the line underneath, as well as the back here. And you can also see here underneath the knee needs to be covered. You can do the same thing for the other one too, like that. Most of the figure actually done. We're going to turn our attention to the jetpack. We paint the jetpack, the boosters here in same color, German grey, as well as there's a small little area here, a bit tricky to get to, like this, quite okay. You also paint the top of the jetpack here, as well as kind of like the entire top like shelf here. As well as anything under the shelf, and then this little crevice here, and all the sides on the way down. Don't be worried if you make mistakes. I will show you just in a second how to touch that up. Now, this is what the jetpack looks like. Now, for the shoes, in various different parts of the internet resources I've looked at, they're either viewed as either black, grey, or pure white. I'm going to actually paint these ones black, but you can leave them if you want to and paint them in just white. But and don't forget this part here, this line here that I forgot a bit, because as well as the line here that crosses the shoes. And then paint the entire shoes in German dark grey. Now, if you do keep them white, I would recommend you to paint the undersides of them in this color, because that actually shows in the law that they are actually dark grey or black on these boots. So that's the only thing I would recommend you if you keep them white. So with this one done, and you see I'm holding it now with my hand as part of because the feet are not entirely dry yet. I'm going to take the opportunity to touch up some of the mistakes I made on before. This one here should not be a spot here. If you think that I got too much paint here, I can just touch this one up with some white grey. As well as here on the legs, you can see that the line is not entirely straight. Here also got too much white. Sometimes you get too much white, and then it's easy just to fill it in with some German dark grey again. Turn it around. Here underneath the, and over here as well. Sometimes you have to give it 2 layers. In terms of the face, now I'll show you the trick. And the trick here is to cover almost everything except for a tiny sliver of German dark grey with white to give that perfect look of the Stormtrooper. I'll zoom in just a second for you to see. Oops. Like that. And you can compare this to the card art, which is not phenomenal, of course, my attempt. Look at the Stormtrooper on the top and to the right. Now, it's supposed to be a little bit grey there, but we can do that in the highlight and finishing touches. Now, of course, you can see here that I made plenty of mistakes here in the crotch section. But it's easily fixed. Now, if you're happy with the Stormtrooper, you can actually finish this tutorial here right now. Seal it with some varnish. My hands are shaking a little bit, sorry about that. You can seal it with some varnish and you're done. But, because that would actually be quite okay for the tabletop. This will look alright. You can compare it to, let's see if I had other Stormtrooper. Another white that I haven't painted yet. Yeah, you can see that it looks decent. It looks alright. Okay? Now, but if you want to continue watching, I will actually show you how to shade the miniature. And we'll take the painting to a new level. You can shade this painting, this miniature in 2 ways. Either you can shade the entire miniature in Vallejo's black shade, such as this one, black wash, or you can use null as well and use it neat. And then, or you can shade only the facial area and the frontal body and maybe the jetpack, and then you're good to go. I'm going to show you how to shade. I'm going to leave this one here to dry. I'm going to take up another miniature that I pre-painted here for you to see. Maybe this one looks a little bit better, maybe. And then I'm going to shade this one in with some black wash. And I'm going to hold on to the miniature here. You will have to shade this one about twice because you may not get into all areas. So I'm using black wash from Vallejo here. I'm going to close the lid of this one so it doesn't spill out. And you soak the entire figure in this way. Take this one, and you want to really make sure that it pulls into all these crevices and especially the frontal part. Don't forget any parts, and you may actually have to, not just the white parts of the miniature, but also the darker parts. And I'll show you why that is important. Just a second, because you see here here on the side here, see if I can focus the camera. Here on the side you actually see these breathing spots, or whatever you call them. Then you can see that it's really nice that it actually gets in there, and you actually see that they actually come to life. Hope you get the idea here. Let's see if I can turn it around here. Of course, the arm, the jetpack, everything needs to be shaded. I won't be able to have to put this one entirely shaded, because I need to do this one more layer, simply because I'm holding on to parts of the model I can't reach. I'm going to leave this one here to the side here, and I'm going to dry off some of the area where it's excess shade, and also try and touch it up as well on the go. Now you leave this one to dry a good half an hour. Now fortunately for you, I've already pre-shaded one of the miniatures, and it looks like this. Now if you compare it to the clean look of what you had before, it looks really dirty, the other one here to the left. I'll turn it around here for you to see. But it definitely, some of the areas here really stand out, especially the face is more predefined, in my opinion. Now you compare this one to the non-painted one, or just base painted. Now this one is just a primer with a small light cover of of white grey that I used to cover some of the parts where the spray didn't actually covered, because it's quite hard to spray paint these ones. Now what we're going to do now is going to be fairly tricky, but not impossible. And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight some the area, so it's actually going to look like a stormtrooper. And we're going to start with applying some German grey, some white grey, just like we did before the bay paint. And I'm going to start by shading, doing the legs. And now the reason here is that I want to try to leave some shading here between these like upper raised areas if I can. And I learned this technique from a really good master. I would call him master, because that's what really truly what he is. He's probably the best miniature painter I've ever come across online, and his name is Rastro. He has a YouTube channel, and his work is just phenomenal. If I can get 1/100th of his skill level when I feel I'm done, then I'm a really happy man. It can be a bit hard to reach here, and if you make a mistake, don't worry. We can always touch it up with some more shade as we go. And you may need a few layers of this one. But you can see here, you can already see the difference between the shade and the non-shade. You also want to touch up areas where you actually think the sun is actually going to shine, or the light is going to go. So that means the front of the figure is going to see more and more highlights, where the areas where there's no light at all, there's going to be almost no highlights. But the frontal part here is kind of the focal point of the miniature. And since it is very dark underneath, that's why you need maybe one or two layers. The chest armor here, we'll see some things here as well, some highlights, and a little bit here underneath, but not much. Stormtroopers used, or clone troopers, if you compare them to the Star Wars universe used something called plastoid armor class 1. Then they were upgraded to plastoid armor class 2 later on. These were clone troopers, and not many original clone troopers actually remained at the time of the fall of the Galactic Empire. So that's why the troopers you can see in the series such as The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they may not be original clone troopers. Because original clone troopers were highly prized for their skills, despite what you can actually see in the movies, that the blast is missing and everything. I am a Star Wars geek, but I don't know everything about Star Wars, so don't quote me on everything I say here. This can be a highly satisfying stage as well, where you highlight up to an area of white or a level of white where you actually feel like you want it. I'm trying to paint on the raised areas here with various degrees of success to see what you can see. Once I get a little bit too not so much paint on my brush, I will actually, it's actually a nice way of saying like, okay, I didn't actually put that much paint on because the sun wouldn't actually shine there. If you also like the Stormtrooper to have a really dirty look, this is your opportunity to actually highlight up to a stage where I feel like, okay, I'm done here. And I'm using using dark, no, what am I talking about? I'm using white grey here because I don't want white to go on straight away, and I want to finish off with some white from Vallejo because in the areas where actually you can see the most amount of light. So I do one layer now, and then I'll continue on with another layer soon. The other pauldron here will be also this color, as well as the side, the underneath here. May not have that much light, but I want to make sure that it doesn't have too much darkness anyways, even though they are serving the Dark Lord, Darth Vader, who I consider to be one of the most iconic villains of all time. I'm going to turn it around now. Hopefully it's going to be fairly dry. And now I'm going to focus some of the attention on the jetpack here. Making sure that the raised areas will stay in shaded. And if you feel that, oh, I covered over an area where it's not supposed to, don't worry, because you can actually cover that up with some battle damage later on, and I'll show you how to. And I'll take this one from Sarastro, which I learned how to do that. You can also take a look at my weathering video from Company Heroes, the board game. That is actually good to learn how to apply battle damage as well. I'm going to turn it around and paint the top of the jetpack, and this was going to go almost pure white. I just want to base coat this one with this color. And you're aiming to get a smooth, even coverage. Something like that. And while I'm already holding here, I'm painting on the side of the arms. As well as a little bit on the other side of the jetpack here. Just to give it a little bit more of tone variation. And same thing for the side of the jetpack here. Again, I don't want to make sure that I disturb these beautiful sides of where the paint, the wash actually went through. And then the top one here as well, I'm giving it another layer. You're probably wondering why I'm doing the face last, and I just want to cover these areas first, and now I'm turning my attention to the face. Now the face, I'm going to start with the steel helmet, or the helmet itself. I'm going to give it a whiter look over here, taking great care not to cover any of the darker areas. And here I'm only want to touch some of the areas here. And you may actually want to switch to an even smaller brush if you have them, such as size 1, to give even more stability. Going back here to the side of the back of the head. Small, thin brush strokes. Make sure that these really nice shades actually are not painted over. If they are, just go back to the stage 1, paint them with some German grey. Now I've got the colour right. And then some shading. Can be a bit annoying, but it actually pays off really well if you get it right. Now another thing here on the side of the hand. Don't forget this part. Really helps the hand stand out, and on the other side as well. And we're coming close to a finish of the first layer here. Adding a second layer as you go. Final stage of the highlight is going to be of the plastoid armor, at least it's going to be some Vallejo White. Now we're going to actually come into the pure stage of where do we want the most white to go. Using a small fine tip brush for this one, size 1, and I want to use over here on this part, on the shoulder pads, also called pauldrons, parts of the leg armor. Spreading it down, so parts of the other white rays showing as well. Kind of like peeling off, if you like that effect, where it's been like used and worn. A little bit on the side here. Turning around the figure. Same thing of the other effect. Using a stickling motion here. Other side of the pauldron. A little bit on the undercoat of the pauldron. The glove. Show it to you here. Now, of course, on the jetpack, the top of the jetpack, as we mentioned previously. If it blends with, or the other actually shows through, it's actually not a problem. It just gives it a more rugged look. And you can highlight up as much as you want in these aspects. As you see here, underneath here, I didn't highlight it at all, it didn't even cover it, because I want to make sure that it stays dark, as well as this one underneath this part of the jetpack. It gives off a shadow here, and it's kind of like a nice effect. And the white here really makes the miniature stand out. I'm gonna give it another try over here with the leg. And these frontal things here on the knee really can be a nice way of adding a nice detail here. As well as the crotch. Can be nice as well. Painting the raised areas of the belt. Now, with that one done, let's turn our attention a little bit to the face again. And the back of the helmet. Now, that's the highlight done for the white parts, and I just want to show you now what it looks like compared to just the wash. This is the wash on the right side, and this is the highlighted miniature. See if I can get it to focus. Wash on the left side, highlighted miniature on the right. It's hard to get this camera to focus today. There you go. So you can see it's a little bit better. And compare this one to no highlights at all, just the basic without the wash. Basic without the wash. This is with the wash and some highlights. Turn our attention to the shoes and the boots. A little bit of the grey areas that we haven't highlighted yet. Now I'm going to apply some neutral grey from Vallejo. Holding this one over here from the jetpack. And I'm applying it neat. And I'm trying to cover the shoe, the lines over here. As well as the boots. Sorry about that. As well as the raised areas of the arm. But not the gloves. And I'm not covering as well, yeah, you can also cover the raised areas here. And this is something you normally wouldn't do with a Stormtrooper. Should have said that before. I'm not covering the lower areas of the arms because they're not going to be shown anyways. But I will actually cover the breathing apparatus. Not the breathing apparatus and the tubes itself, but the grey area here as per the card art. And also the top area here. However, the darker parts of the figure of the face still going to be remaining as black. And now with that one done, the shoes of course needs to be touched up a little bit more. Finally, we're putting our attention to the gun, which I'm using a color called from Vallejo's game color called Chainmail Silver, which is a nice color to use for gun parts and stuff like that. And I'm not going to touch the entire gun. I'm just going to give it a small raised areas such as the sights, parts of the gun, small areas like this. Also want to give it to parts of the breathing tubes here, just tiny details, as well as the jetpack. So if you've covered the jetpack with some white here accidentally, you can actually cover it over to the sides here with some wear and tear of chainmail. And if it does actually cover it with white, it will actually show even more that it's like metal. Gives also a unique impression that it's going to be, these ones are actually metal itself. Something like this. There are two more details I want to cover. They're entirely optional except for one, which is going to be the red button on the front of the panel, which I'm going to paint with some Citadel's Mephiston Red. You can use Vallejo's red as well if you like. Give the bottle a good shake before you use it. And then this one, I really think this one will make sure that the Stormtrooper really pops here. Like this. I forgot to paint the other one, the small area here, with some German grey. Something like this. And also the gloves, I'm painting them with a glossy black because it looks really nice and shiny. I like that. From Vallejo. You can keep them German grey if you really want to. It's optional. But I think this one makes them stand out even more. Make sure you don't paint over the white areas here. And you can do the other thing for the glove underneath here if you like. And on the other side. If you feel that you've touched too much on the metal parts here, you can touch it over with a little bit of glossy black. As well as touch over this part here with some black as well. Making it really stand out. Final part of this model, besides the base, is going to use some Vallejo's blue, royal blue, or you can also use regular blue. If you have that, and the Citadel option would be Calgar blue. And you're probably wondering, why would you want to do that? Well, for the Calgar blue, which I'm using in this option, tiny bit, is that there is an air vent in the magnified solution of the miniature up here. There. Not that much, but it actually shows. Now, for the base, I pre-painted them white like this. You can paint them in the color you want. You want to do German dark gray, or you want to paint some of your favorite basing material. That's up to you. And there you have the ready-made Stormtrooper, or the Jet Trooper from Star Wars Imperial Assault, the Jabba's Realm expansion. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how do I paint my Elite Troopers? Because this one comes in two forms, the regular one or the Elite. Elite is a little bit trickier, but you use the same one, but the only thing is there's a difference here, is the shoulder pauldron here, over here, is sometimes colored red for Elite, because the base trim of the base here is red. Now, I looked up some interesting facts. You can do red. It was signified as squadron leaders or stuff like that. But you could also paint them in blue. from Vallejo, which is an interesting choice because that signifies the 501st Legion, the top of the top, the best of the best in terms of stormtroopers. And they were the ones who stormed the Jedi Temple and, like, you know, things like that. From if you know the stories of the Star Wars, and the 501st Legion is a solid choice for that. So either red or blue, and you only paint the left pauldron over here. Otherwise, it stays the same. Don't forget to base the base using the basing material of your choice, as well as seal this miniature in varnish, which I have over here, which I'm not going to do because I'm going to paint the base in another color. But here you use matte varnish mixed in 50-50 over your entire miniature, so it stays in this color for many playthroughs. If you like this video, please don't hesitate to actually subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate that. And otherwise, share it with your friends. Write a comment if you like this video, and I will see you next time. Go and put some paint on those brushes, enjoy the miniatures, and I'll thank you very much for watching and staying with me for this long.